Hello, Fearless family. Welcome to Sunday School. If you'll turn your Bibles to Mark chapter 5. Mark chapter 5. We're going to look at the miracle of when Jairus' daughter was healed by Jesus. I'll tell you a little bit about how I became to teach this Sunday. Last Monday, I was on the way to Home Depot to get some essential items for some backyard projects that we're working on. And I was in the truck, and being the sinner that I am, I was listening to 98 Rocks, and the Journey song came on, Don't Stop Believing. Hold on to that feeling, you know how it goes. And so if you're like me, if you listen to a song and then when you get home and you're out where it's quiet, well then that song keeps playing over in your mind. And that Don't Stop Believing kept coming up in my mind, and I was thinking, Jesus said that somewhere, and there's a good story there somewhere. And so I thought about this miracle. In this miracle, Jesus has the famous line where he says, "Don't be afraid, just believe." And that's the key phrase of this miracle. In what we're going through today in society, there are a lot of people that are afraid. They're afraid of the coronavirus. They're afraid for their finances, their job, their family, school. They're just afraid of a lot of things, and maybe it's their own health. And then those fears cause us to have other problems. Just fear itself comes in. Then we have anxiety and worry, and those things can even lead to us having some health problems because they make us stressful. All of us have various fears. I've told you this before, but my greatest fear is snakes, and I will scream like a little girl at the smallest snake that comes upon me. This man, the story today, his fear was for his daughter. His 12-year-old daughter was very sick, and he had faith that Jesus could heal his daughter, and he goes to seek Jesus out. Let's read this story. We'll read through the story, and then we're going to come back and look at some key points in this story and some lessons that we can learn. Mark chapter 5, beginning in verse 21. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue rulers, named Jairus, came there. Seeing Jesus, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. But a large crowd followed and pressed around him. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. And when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. Because she thought, "If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him, and he turned around the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," the disciples answered, "and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came, and she fell at his feet, trembling with fear, and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." While Jesus was still speaking to her, some men came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue ruler, and said, "Your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore?" Ignoring what they said, Jesus told the synagogue ruler, "Don't be afraid, just believe." He did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. And when they came to the home of the synagogue ruler, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly. And he went in and said to them, Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead, but asleep. But they laughed at him. After he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him, and he went in where the child was, and he took her by the hand and said to her, Little girl, I say to you, get up. Immediately the girl stood up and walked around. She was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. Now, who is this Jairus guy? Some people say Jairus, some people say Jairus, some people say Jairus. I kind of say a combination of all three of those. I think Jairus is the correct pronunciation for this man. But who is this guy? It says he's a synagogue ruler. He has a very important position in the town. It's like being the mayor or in a very prominent position. Maybe he's like over a big church. Everybody in town knows him. Everybody in town respects him. Everybody likes him. Think Pastor Jeff Shreve. It'd be kind of like him in Texarkana. Everybody knows him. Everybody knows who he is. Everybody likes him. He's just a good guy. So everybody knows Jairus. And so he was that guy here, and he's in this position, and we assume he's a good guy since he has this position. This position has its perks. Everybody welcomes him. Everybody's glad to see him. He gets the choice table in the restaurants. He has a tea time every Monday at the country club. He has a nice house, a nice family, except for what's going on right now with his daughter. When he comes to Jesus, he drops all that other stuff about who he is or his position. He doesn't offer anything to Jesus in return for help. He just pleads for this help. He doesn't care anything except about getting his daughter healed. You can see there in verse 22 and 23, there's two important things that Jairus does. It says he fell at Jesus' feet and he pleaded earnestly. This is a man who is serious. He knows Jesus can help him. There's no bargaining going on. There's no games. And there's no, you do me a favor, I'll do you a favor. I'll get you a spot in the synagogue to speak next week. None of that. He just comes to Jesus. I need you to help me. And to me, it seems like he knows Jesus can help him. He knows Jesus can heal his daughter. Time is short. Time is critical. I'm assuming in this story that Jairus ran to Jesus from his house. We don't know how far away it was from the house to where Jesus is at this time. But I assume if I was the dad, I would have ran as fast as I could to go get Jesus. Also, one thing you notice in this story, and you'll notice in every story about the miracles of Jesus, he's never in a hurry. In fact, he's never in a hurry ever, like we are. He doesn't get in a hurry here. He takes time to listen to this woman who butts in here in verse 24. It tells us about this large crowd that's following Jesus that eventually will disperse and only be a group of 6 that go to this little girl's room. And this woman butts in on Jairus' miracle. She butts in and gets his place in line. He was there first. And she jumps in and slows down this process. She touches Jesus. She gets healed. And Jesus stops. And Jesus will not move until he finds out who touched him. He knows who touched him, but he wants her to come forward. You'll notice also in verse 33 that when she does come forward, it says that she told him the whole truth. She told him her whole story. She gave him the woman's version of her story here. She probably goes on and on and on about how she's been sick. I went to this doctor. I went to this doctor. I've done this and this and this. And she's just going on and on and on and on, telling her story. Meanwhile, Jairus is sitting over here at the side waiting for this woman to finally get done telling her story so Jesus can come to his house. You know, what's he thinking? What's Jairus thinking here? I can't believe we're stopping for this lady. And I can't believe she won't shut up so we can go on. And I was here first, by the way, and she butted in on me. Maybe he kind of gets Jesus by the hand and says, okay, can we go now? My 12-year-old daughter, let's go. And so they start to take off. You'll see in verse 35, it says, while Jesus was still speaking, and it appears while he was still speaking to this woman, some people come from Jairus' house and say, never mind. Your daughter has died. Never mind. Don't bother Jesus anymore. There's no point in him coming. Apparently, they believed Jesus could heal this girl, but they did not believe he could raise her from the dead. They believed he could heal her, but they didn't believe he had that much power, apparently. Jairus' friends bring him the news that it's too late. Don't bother Jesus anymore. We're just going to go back home and mourn. We'll make the funeral arrangements and we'll go on. Verse 36, you can see that Jesus heard what they said. It says he ignored them and then speaks directly to Jairus and speaks that famous line. Don't be afraid, just believe. Jesus is blocking out these people who don't believe. He's just ignoring the haters. And sometimes for us, maybe that's the best thing to do is just win by walking away. We win the argument by not saying nothing and going on. We win by just focusing on who our friends are. He's just focusing on Jairus and not the other people there who apparently are unbelievers at this point. He speaks directly to Jairus. Looks him straight in the eye. Don't be afraid, just believe. Now, since he says that, there must be some fear in his eyes, and Jesus can feel him just shrink a little bit when he hears this news about his daughter. There's no response recorded here from Jairus, but apparently he nodded or acknowledged what Jesus said, and because they do go on ahead toward his house. Also, you notice in verse 37 that not everyone goes to the house. Jesus does not need a big audience, and maybe this tells us too that doubters and unbelievers get left behind. Only believers get to see miracles, and only get to be a part of what Jesus has for us. For Jairus, it was just his wife, Jesus, Peter, James, and John. Those are the only ones going into the house. Verse 38, you see that finally they make it to the house. And the mourners are there already. They're doing their job. And there's a word there, a good old southern word there, says commotion. This wailing and crying, it's over the top mourning is what they're doing. It's a really just big show that they're putting on, being really dramatic in their mourning. In verse 39, Jesus makes a statement. It's a question and a statement. He says, "Why all this commotion and wailing? The child is not dead but asleep." It's a rhetorical question, and it's a statement of fact also. Jesus knows that she is dead, but in his mind, it's just a rest because he's going to resurrect her from the dead. Verse 40, you see this audience's reaction. It says they laughed at Jesus, which means there probably was some words in there too. They mocked him. They made fun of him because he said this. They knew she was dead. And they're making fun of Jesus here. Also, you notice that in verse 40, the next thing after they laughed at him, it says he put them all out. In your Bible, it may say he threw them out. This is the same phrasing, wording that is used when Jesus threw the money changers out of the temple. This is a forceful, get out of here throwing out. He is very angry at these people. And this is not a, would y'all mind waiting outside? That's not what this is. He's like, y'all get out of here. We have some business to do. Jesus is not going to allow these haters to distract or to mock him or to interfere with the miracle he's going to perform for Jairus. Also, like I said, you notice there in verse 40, Jesus, Jairus, his wife, Peter, James, John, those are the only ones who go in, who get to go in. In verse 41, Jesus simply speaks to the girl and says, I say to you, get up. He speaks directly to her. And then you see the word that is always mentioned in every miracle of Jesus. It says, immediately. There's no time lapse. There's no abracadabra. There's no extra emotions going on. You saw it with the woman that was healed of blood in this same story. It says immediately with her. Every time, it's immediate. It's a instant healing that takes place, and an instant resurrection for this girl here. There's no long prayer, no long pause. The girl just stands up and walks around. What are our lessons from this miracle? I think we can learn some things from Jairus because he went, we can see what he did. He went to Jesus. He went directly to Jesus. He went directly and talked to Jesus. He believed that Jesus could help him. He made a simple statement of what his prayer was. I need you to help me. My daughter is sick. Amen. That's his prayer. That's it. It's a simple statement. This is what's going on. I need help. We can see also that he listens to what Jesus says. There's not a lot of back and forth between the two, between Jesus and Jairus. It's a short conversation. But it's obvious to me he believes what Jesus says and he's listening. You also notice that Jairus sticks with Jesus through this whole time. He doesn't waver back and forth. He doesn't believe, not believe, believe, not believe. He stays with Jesus through this whole time. Obviously, he had to ignore the people who are doubting. His friends were the doubters. He had to ignore them and go on with Jesus and separate from his friends. He sticks with Jesus when his friends doubt. He stuck with Jesus when his friends laughed. Those were his friends back at the house too. He stuck with Jesus when there was a delay. There was a lot of, we don't know the time lapse here between when the woman butted in, but he hung around and stuck with Jesus. Also, we can learn from what Jesus did here. He spoke directly to Jairus. He spoke directly to him and gave him the word. Because they were talking back and forth, Jesus gives him this phrase, don't be afraid, just believe. Jesus doesn't listen to the doubters around. He ignores them. He keeps his focus on Jairus. He throws out the doubters. He separates Jairus from the doubters too. Sometimes for us, that's something that needs to happen with us. We get separated from those who don't believe and those who hinder our belief. Jesus only takes believers in to see the miracle, to participate in this miracle that's going on. The believers only get to see it. Now, was their faith of the ones who went in there, was it 100% rock solid? Maybe not. But they did have faith. They did have some faith, and they did believe. And maybe that's why Jesus said to him initially, don't be afraid, just believe. For us today, maybe we can think about, what do I need to believe Jesus for? What am I afraid of, and what do I need to ask for? And just think about that for yourself. As we end today, we've been reading Psalm 27, but I want you to turn to Psalm 34. I'll read Psalm 34 together today. I think this goes better with this study today. We'll read the entire Psalm. Psalm 34 is 22 verses. So we begin in verse 1 of Psalm 34. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise will always be on my lips. My soul will boast in the Lord. Let the afflicted hear and rejoice. Glorify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he answered me and delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. This poor man called, and the Lord heard him. He saved him out of his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. Fear the Lord, you his saints, for those who fear him lack nothing. The lions may grow weak and hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good thing. Come, my children, and listen to me, and I will teach you the fear of the Lord. Whoever of you loves life and desires to see many good days, keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking lies. Turn from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their cry. The face of the Lord is against those who do evil, to cut off the memory of them from the earth. The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them, and he delivers them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and he saves those who are crushed in spirit. A righteous man may have many troubles, but the Lord delivers him from them all. He protects his bones, and not one of them will be broken. Evil will slay the wicked. The foes of the righteous will be condemned. The Lord redeems his servants. No one will be condemned who takes refuge in him. Let me remind you again, if you need anything, you can contact me or Cindy, or you can leave a message on the GroupMe or the Fearless page. Just let us know if we can help you with anything. Good day.